Welcome, everybody. This is Wilson Alvarez, technology consultant with MiamiBusiness.com, where we interview positive people around the Miami area. Today, I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Miguel Fra. He's with Falcon IT Services. And Miguel, welcome.
Thank you, Wilson. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're going to have fun today because we're going to talk about something that during this time I'm actually passionate about, which is hurricane preparedness. So I'm going to let you take the lead and let's have a conversation about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is a time of year that starts our hurricane season, and a lot of people get nervous. They start putting up their shutters, and not putting up their shutters, but start buying impact windows and doing other types of things to prepare. And one of the important things to do is, if you're a business owner, is to also prepare your IT infrastructure and make sure that you're covered.
So what are some of the preliminary how should we protect ourselves, and let's use a small business office with maybe 20 computers or less. What would be your ideal plan 6 months prior to hurricane season?
Okay, so ideally you would start planning ahead of time, preparing for contingencies. You don't want to wait until the last minute, until there's a hurricane and that's showing up at your doorstep. You want to do this through disaster recovery, contingency planning, and have a business continuity process, so that if there is an event such as a hurricane that strikes your business, you have all these things already in place and you have a plan that you could follow, and not kind of at the last minute see what you're going to do.
So disaster recovery, great buzzword.
Yeah.
Give me a sample of I don't want to say a simplified one, but we don't have a lot of time today. Give me an example of a simplified disaster recovery.
Okay, so for a typical small business, right? For example, small businesses often run QuickBooks, and that's how they invoice, create revenue. So for a disaster recovery plan, could be something as simple as making sure that if something happens to your servers, to your computers, or wherever you house that QuickBooks data, that you have a way of getting that data out and being able to continue billing in the event of a hurricane, so that you could continue to produce revenue.
So this is a great conversation. So let's talk about specifically QuickBooks. Again, we have 20 users. The accounting department probably has 3, maybe 4 users. Let's say 5 users. And are we going to store the data on the server, or would you rather do it online? Which my immediate answer would be, if it's online, it's just going to be online regardless if there's a hurricane here or there. It's going to work. So what's your opinion based on that? Again, 20 users, 5 user license with QuickBooks. What's the game plan for that?
Okay, so there really is no right or wrong answer. It all depends on the client's needs. Some people run QuickBooks locally on a server, and some people prefer to go online. If you go online, you have the part of the QuickBooks where it's being hosted somewhere else, where it's unlikely that there's also a hurricane going on there at the same time. So the data is going to be there. You're going to have access to it. The only thing that you would have to worry about is, how are you going to get to that data? If there's a hurricane, you may not have internet, you may not have cell phone service. So how are your employees going to be able to access that online service? And the answer to that is usually real simple. You could plan for example, either going to a relative's house that lives nearby where it's an unaffected zone and having them work from home, or you could, ahead of time, if you think something like that may happen, you could book some rooms at a hotel in an area where the hurricane's not going to be passing through. So you could go to that hotel and continue working and get a small skeleton crew of employees that could go working.
And that would only, of course, work for the QuickBooks area. We're not even talking about the actual data and the Excel spreadsheets and the Word and the PowerPoint and all the other and all of those others. But QuickBooks, if it's stored on site and there's a catastrophe, there's no internet in the building, there's no electricity in the building, that's a problem. That's a problem. So how does a backup come to play then? So we have a backup, and now let's say we have it on an external hard drive or something, and we have the QuickBooks file on the external hard drive. We would have to go somewhere off-site that has internet, load a laptop, I'm assuming, and I don't want to give you the answer. I wanted your opinion based on that scenario. Again, they have the QuickBooks file. It's online. It's on the server. No internet in the building. No computers in the building. You do have this magical USB external hard drive that happens to have last week's QuickBooks. What do we do?
So with QuickBooks, it's a really simple answer. You could load that onto a laptop and work off the laptop. With the rest, but it's usually a little bit more complex than that because it's not just one person accessing QuickBooks. It's usually several people. Part of that, disaster recovery and contingency planning is a lot of people choose to take their infrastructure and put it inside a data center. So once you put that inside a data center, which is basically you're in the cloud now. It's just a private cloud, right? Then you've taken all your infrastructure, including your QuickBooks, what other applications, what other data you may have. It's in a data center where it's secured, where there is going to be electricity, where there is going to be internet. So all your access is there. The only thing that you have to figure out is how you're going to get your employees to get online to access that data. Most of the time they're going to be on a VPN. They could go to a hotel, they could go to a relative's house, or find some place where there's electricity and internet. So that's one way of doing it.
So I'm going to tell you what I captured from what you just told me. I think you just gave me an amazing solution for this sample company that has 20 users. We create this online system. Is that's a thin client, or what is that exactly? The cloud computer, what would that be called?
A cloud computer? You mean like a private? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So I'm envisioning that if we double click remote desktop on any computer and it goes to the cloud,
yeah,
and then I can have access to a duplicate of my server. So maybe we can back up the stuff over there and, have access. I don't know if I'm inventing that, or I don't know if that exists, or I don't know if that's a good solution. What would be the adequate solution? And, in that situation, building's down, we got to go to, 10 miles away.
Okay. Well, the answer to that is really to have done some contingency planning before the event happens. Part of that contingency planning would be, so for example, let's say you have your infrastructure in-house on premise. You don't have any cloud infrastructure. One of the things that people don't take into consideration is something called RTO, recovery time objective, which is, yes, you have your backups, and this works not only for hurricane, but other contingencies. For example, if you get hacked or if your data gets encrypted, you have a backup and that backup is available. But how long is it going to take for you to recover that backup? How long is it going to take you to replace damaged equipment? And that could sometimes span days or weeks, and your business is going to be down for that time. So that's part of the recovery time objective and part of your contingency planning. And
that really needs to be planned efficiently, because if not, it could cost a lot of money. How do we protect the equipment? Let's talk about the individual workstations.
Okay, so during a hurricane, it's very important to do a few things. Number one is make sure, as you mentioned before, to have an offsite backup, so that if your building is affected or your data is destroyed, or it could be theft. I mean, if your windows break or there's
looting,
things like that. Somebody could go in there, they could steal your servers, they could steal your backup drives. So you want to make sure that you have an offsite backup. Another thing is, before you leave the building, turn off your computers, but also unplug them from the wall outlet. Lift them up off the ground if you're in a zone that could be flooded, so that they don't get damaged. If you have a drop ceiling, or you have maybe you think that your roof could leak, you could cover the equipment with a plastic trash bag. And again, it's very important to unplug it. You don't want that equipment to then regain power after the event, be in a trash bag, and then overheat or be damaged.
Yes. I want to also add, you mentioned, elevating the systems in case of a flood, but the reality is that it could be also a leak from the floor that, causes a little bit of water where it can, so it's a great idea to elevate the systems. And not only the systems, but all the peripherals, the UPSs and all that stuff. Yeah, that's good. Good stuff.
And that's also very important, because when the power does come back on, if your equipment's plugged in and there's either high humidity that's gotten inside or there's water inside, it's going to damage your equipment. And then your employees come back, but they're going to find equipment that's not functional.
Yeah. And also, you mentioned unplugging the systems. That's also important, because there's a lot of, surges during the time and all kinds of crazy things that can happen. So let's talk about also, I guess, tornadoes, because I realize that tornadoes happen within the hurricane, and it may not happen much, but it can happen. So what any other precautionary measures that we should take, because tornadoes are catastrophic, if my understanding, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a meteorologist, but I would guess that I know that there are tornadoes within hurricanes, and that the winds on tornadoes could reach much higher speeds than those of hurricanes. Right. So a tornado could possibly, damage your building, level it, and all the equipment in it. So that's why it's important in your contingency planning to plan for that as well.
Yeah. So we spoke about the discovery recovery plan. I want to talk about backup strategies, because, me being an IT guy, I have what I consider my strategy, but you being the second level support, third level support individual, I truly would value extra wisdom in regards to this. Backup strategies. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So in the backup strategy, basically, in the event of a hurricane, you want to have offsite backups. But it's just a general backup strategy. The industry standard is something called the GFR. It's a grandfather, father, and son. GFS, grandfather, father, son strategy. So basically, you have to figure out how your backups, how far back you want to be able to go, and at what time intervals you want to be able to go. So usually with the GFS, what people do is they back up every day for maybe a week, or every day for a month. And then they back up once a month for 12 months, doing that going back to 2 years. And then they have a retention period that could span 7 years, but you only do it once, and you keep that backup once a year. Now, I know it sounds confusing, all right? But basically, if you have to go back, let's say that right now somebody creates a document and it gets erased, and you don't find out about it.
Or modified.
You don't find out about it for a certain amount of time. If you've only got a 30-day backup, and you didn't find out about the document being erased after the 31st day, you're going to have lost that. Mm-hmm. So if you have in addition to your daily backup for 30 days, if you have a monthly backup that spans 2 years, okay, then you could go back a month, a snapshot of what happened a month ago, what happened 2 months ago, what happened 3 months ago. And if you have a yearly, you could go back to a snapshot of what happened 1 year ago, exactly 2 years ago. The reason you don't do every day for 5 years is because it would have a lot of data, and you would need a lot of storage.
Right.
But generally, what people do is they have a 30-day daily for 30 days, and they have monthly once a month for going back a year, maybe 2 years, and then they have once a year going back to, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years.
Yeah, that's actually happened to me. One particular document that I modified, maybe 6 months worth, and then I wish I can go back to my original document, and I couldn't find it because it was overwritten. So,
there's also, I'm sorry to interrupt, there's also backups that once a document is changed or edited or anything, the backup creates a backup of it at that point in time.
Right.
So that if you create a document and 10 minutes later you erase it and the nightly backup hasn't run yet, you could go back and recover. It does put a little bit of stress on your network and on your servers, and you need more storage, but it could be a lifesaver or a time saver for some people.
Okay. Very good. Can we talk about the cloud for a second?
Absolutely.
I would love to have a conversation with you in regards to how can cloud services mitigate, going back to the hurricane season, how can it help us be productive after the hurricane?
Okay. Well, you know, the cloud service, the advantage that the cloud service has is that your application, there's different types of cloud. There's just not a cloud, right? There's different types of, there's, for example, what a lot of people know as the cloud is really SaaS, right? It's basically your application, like, for example, your office productivity, your ERP, your CRM. It's an application owned by somebody else, and it's running on somebody else's hardware and on somebody else's operating system. So the only thing that's yours is the data, right? And that's SaaS. So if you're running SaaS, you don't have to worry about servers, operating systems, hardware, maintenance, anything. You just pay your monthly bill to the SaaS provider, and they provide a turnkey solution for your ERP, for your accounting, for whatever it is. It's in their infrastructure. So if you have an event of a hurricane, that data is still there. The infrastructure that provides you access to the data is still there. All you have to do is figure out a way to access it. And that could be, you know, if your business is closed or doesn't have power or doesn't have internet, it could be having your employees log in from their homes. Or if the entire city of Miami is without internet, it could mean going to an adjacent city, staying at a hotel, and working from there. So it facilitates it. It really does make it easy in comparison to having your internal infrastructure.
So I want to talk for a second about Azure. It's Active Directory, which means that if you log in, you type in your username, you type in your password, it maintains all of your documents online, SaaS.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we just move everything to the OneDrive platform, the Microsoft Azure scenario?
Well, like I said, it's really dependent on each individual and what their needs are, what their budget is. There's a lot of different things to consider. A lot of people run hybrid systems, right, where they move part of their infrastructure into a cloud service, whether it's Google or whether it's Microsoft, but they retain some. So I'm going to give you an example. I do have some clients that they do designs. They have very large files. They're running AutoCAD. They're running 10 gigabit networks internally because they need speedy access, large files. Their servers are 20 terabyte SANs. So, you know, in an infrastructure like that, you know, you probably would want to move your email to the cloud, but you may want to retain your storage locally because you have faster access to it. So it's different for everyone. A lot of really small businesses like either SMBs or micro businesses or SOHOs, they move everything to the cloud because they just don't have a lot of information. Large files, right. But some of the larger businesses, they have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data that they need quick access to. And it's a lot easier to access it locally than it is to access it over the internet. So
for the small businesses, 20 users or less, let's say, would you recommend the cloud 100%? Or it's still the hybrid system?
You know, what I usually do is I speak to clients and I let them make that decision. I give them the information that they need to make that decision, but it's up to people. Everybody has a different way of looking at things. There's some people that are very security conscious. They don't want their data in the cloud. They don't know who's going to have access to it, how it's going to be used. They worry about things like that. If that's your primary worry, I would tell you, yeah, keep it on-prem, and that way you're going to feel more secure. There's other people that worry about, is a hurricane going to shut my business down and my infrastructure is going to close and we're not going to be able to bill excuse me, we're not going to be able to invoice and create revenue and my business is going to get you. If that's your primary worry, then the cloud is probably for you. So it's different for everyone.
Yeah. You just brought another topic for another day, the cybersecurity aspect of it. So I want to thank you. This was great. I want to thank you for your wisdom. It's been great. Hopefully we can have you come back and talk more tech stuff. I love it.
Before we go, there's one thing I wanted to mention, and that is UPSs.
Yes.
A lot of people purchase UPSs from their local office supply store, and they're purchasing UPSs that are nothing more than a battery with a switching mechanism so that when the electricity goes out, your computer stays on. But these UPSs don't provide adequate protection. So if you're out there and you're listening, it's very important to purchase a UPS that has an AVR, or what's known as an automatic voltage regulator, because computers are very sensitive to electrical surges. So the AVR, what it does is if your electricity starts to spike up, it will bring it right back down. And if it starts to brown out or go below, it'll bring it right back up. Computers like a really even 115 volts. They don't like ups and downs.
It equalizes the electric current.
That's right.
Yeah.
So look for something that's an AVR, an automatic voltage regulator, and don't be fooled by these boxes that tell you protection.
Pure protection.
A lot of the times those things are nothing more than just a circuit breaker. So they could say, yeah, technically they protect you, but it's not the same as having an AVR.
Yes, totally agree. I'm a big fan of AVR. So.
Yeah. And I've had situations where I've walked into businesses where they tell me, oh, these computers, it's a terrible brand. We go through computers and then we install UPSs with AVR, and all of a sudden these computers, they start to behave differently,
right?
Because voltage problems are really not good for computers.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Miguel, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to thank you for joining us, and we will see you again very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Good.